The worst disaster in Idaho's history took everyone by surprise.
Complete devastation, water all over the place and mud.
It could have been a scene from the Bible, but frighteningly, it was reality for the people of eastern Idaho.
I wonder how we all survived.
Today on Exploring Idaho, victims vividly recall that fateful day, June 5th, 1976. The day nature unleashed with destructive force. The day of the Teton Dam disaster.
On the anniversary of the Teton Dam disaster, victims relive the devastating event. An edible forest treat calls mushroom hunters into the wilds, and it's peak season for bird watching at one of Idaho's largest wetland preserves.
More than 20 years after the Teton Dam disaster, residents of the Upper Snake River Valley recall the event like it was yesterday. And no wonder. The flood that followed destroyed 4,000 homes, stripped the topsoil off 100,000 acres of farmland, and it left 11 people dead. It was an ordeal that placed permanent scars on those who lived through it. Hello and welcome to Exploring Idaho. I'm CAROLYN Holly, guest hosting for Dee Sarton. Today, as we approach the June 5th anniversary of the Teton Dam disaster, we look back at just what happened that frightening day. How the force that broke communities apart brought those who suffered so close together. And how the entire experience changed thousands of lives forever. The official conclusion by independent investigators for the failure of the Teton Dam is human error. First, the porous lava bedrock that lines the Teton River was far from a good foundation for an earth-filled dam. Second, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation came up with something far from a good design. Whatever the reasons, more than 20 years after the disaster, this quiet mountain of earth, all that remains of the doomed Teton Dam, speaks novels. The chapters could hold titles like Pain, Sorrow, Loss, even Death. The story begins at 11:52 a.m. on June 5th, 1976.
The water that cascaded down through there was unbelievable. It's about 300 feet of water in depth at that time, more than 300 feet. And it began to come through. I think at first it came through about a 60-foot wall, then 100 feet, and finally the whole dam on the north side gave way. And it's a scene that it just took your breath, and you wondered what's going to happen downstream.
The event took the entire valley by surprise. 80 billion gallons of water rushed out of Teton Reservoir with unbridled destructive force. The rampaging water crashed against the river channels, then rushed across the fertile Upper Snake River Valley toward the small farming communities of Sugar City and Rexburg.
I lived in Sugar City, and I was, of course, at my home, and a scout came over and told me that the dam had broke, and I was supposed to leave immediately, and a Boy Scout, and leave immediately and go out to high ground.
Residents like Bonnie Curtis had little time. She and her neighbors were told to take nothing. Families rushed to their cars in bedroom slippers or barefoot. They carried nothing more than the clothes that they were wearing.
I put my son and my daughter in the car. They were 8 and 10, and we drove to Rexburg. We had 20 minutes warning, and my daughter looked in the rearview mirror, and she says, "Mother, look out the rearview mirror. You can see the water going across the road." I'd stopped and got my shoes on, or stopped and got my genealogy or my pictures that I'd lost, I wouldn't be here today. I was told to leave and to take nothing with me. Our lives are in danger, so I left.
On the heels of fleeing Sugar City residents, a wave of water 10 feet high and almost 15 miles wide tore into and uprooted almost everything in its path. Homes were lifted from their foundation and tossed to new locations. Vehicles were transformed into twisted junk. Railroad tracks and highways were snapped in two, and mobile homes bounced about like tiny toys. Within 2 hours, Sugar City was under 15 feet of water. Before the day ended, 2/3 of the 9,000 residents of Rexburg were homeless.
Still, to this day, I talk about it, and you just can't explain it. That feeling of not knowing where one of your kids are at a time like that.
Shirley Wright's son was out with his scout troop when the destructive waters drowned Rexburg.
Friday night they'd gone and was supposed to be home Saturday morning, and they was going fishing. And the leader had given them permission to go up to Squirrel Creek, up that way. And I didn't know it. I don't think he dared tell me that he had given permission.
Shirley spent the entire day anxiously wondering if her son was alive. As the waters ripped and tore at her home, making rubble of everything she owned, she could think of nothing but young John. It wasn't until 8 hours later that night at her sister's house, Shirley learned that her son had survived.
After that, it was just immaterial. I mean, you thought about it and you worried, what in the world are we going to do? What are we going to do? There, your house is gone. Your parents' home is gone. Your in-laws' home is gone. What are you going to do? The motels that around were filled. You had nowhere to go.
Her family was back together, but the ordeal was far from over. While Sugar City and Rexburg residents wondered what in the world to do, the floodwaters made more victims. Now, loaded with trees and debris, the flood battered everything in its path. After Rexburg, it hit Roberts, leaving little behind. Next in line was Idaho Falls. Residents there prepared for the worst. A citywide sandbagging effort dragged through the night. On Sunday morning, the flood hit, but its force had weakened. Idaho Falls lost several bridges and highways, but managed to avoid major damage. Downriver, American Falls Dam operators frantically released water. Spillways were wide open, and still, engineers worried whether the century-old dam could withstand the force of the flood. On Tuesday, the floodwaters hit American Falls, and the dam held. 3 days after the Teton Dam collapsed, its destructive force had finally been tamed. But left in its wake were thousands of victims, homeless and helpless.
Complete devastation, water all over the place, and mud especially. And you go open the door and go in, and the smell and everything else is just heartbreaking, really.
Vern LILJENQUIST was in Hawaii when the flood hit. He returned to Rexburg to find his men's clothing store a total loss.
The water came in the front, knocked through the plate glass windows, and came in this way, right down this aisle, and tried to get out the back. It couldn't break that door, and so it just whirled around and went back, not only through here, but through the stock room, and just pulled everything down and went into the office and pulled all the stuff down, and then it got out again.
It took months to clean up and repair before Vern would again open his doors. But others were not so fortunate.
I think I've blocked out. You block out things that you just can't deal with.
Shirley Wright's son had survived, but her Rexburg home was completely destroyed. Flipping through photographs of the roof knocked off and the kitchen in shambles, we notice these are the first pictures in her album. That's because everything she owned up until that point, clothing, furniture, jewelry, family photos, everything is gone, lost to the water of the flood.
Around here, we refer before the flood, after the flood. Still.
Today, the communities hit hardest by the flood are bustling, successful towns. Families have long ago rebuilt homes. Children wouldn't know any such disaster ever occurred. But a story this big, one that affected so many people, doesn't just lay down and die, especially if Bonnie Curtis gets a hold of you.
I've been here 12 years, and they call me the flood lady, the kids on the street, because I tell them about the flood when they come on their field trips.
With photographs and movies, the Flood Lady explains just what happened that dark day in June of 1976. She tells in vivid detail of the destruction and how the people of eastern Idaho joined together to overcome disaster.
This is a piece of Idaho history, and the children need to know that this was a great thing that happened to change the lives of Grandpa and Grandma.
For the curious, this final page remains in the story of the Teton Dam.
I just saw the sign and stopped by.
The old spillway and this heap of earth stand as ragged reminders of the power of nature.
Something like this, though, even now, people talk about it. They don't forget about it because it devastated a lot of people.
The Teton Flood Museum is an education in itself. It's open to visitors during regular business hours. And what remains of the Teton Dam sits just off of Highway 33, east of Sugar City.
Well, hopefully this is just the start.
Welcome back to Exploring Idaho. I'm CAROLYN Holly. We're taping at the Idaho Botanical Gardens near Boise. Carefully landscaped and meticulously maintained, there are thousands of species of plants here, and many of them are native to Idaho. Exploring Idaho's JENNIFER ISENHART is going to join us now to talk about one of the native plants that sure has Idahoans on the run this spring.
That's right. You know, CAROLYN, if you know what you're looking for, Idaho's native plants are much more than just beautiful. They're edible. And this spring, several varieties of edible wild mushrooms are popping out. So we decided to head out with an expert in search of a mouth-watering mushroom called a morel.
I love the taste of the mushrooms. I do a lot of cooking as kind of a hobby, so I really like using the mushrooms that I find out in the woods. And you can't buy anything in the stores usually like them.
The thrill of hunting for wild mushrooms hooked Boise and Pat Stoll years ago.
I guess I really just enjoy looking for them. To me, it's almost like an Easter egg hunt.
Only difference is brightly colored Easter eggs are much easier to spot than little camouflaged mushrooms. But you must admit, the playing field for mushroom hunting beats the heck out of the average backyard.
Just getting out in the woods and the forest. I love the hiking around and an excuse to get out and do some of the hiking.
We're looking for the edible and delicious morel, a popular mushroom in spring. Easy to identify by the dark raised lines that crisscross around the cap, morels are a tasty reward for the hunter willing to hike the woods. So Pat, I found something here. I'm not really sure what it is.
This looks like one of the guild mushrooms. This looks like it may have been a chanterelle from last season, probably.
Spongy and half-rotted, it looks like strike one. So Pat describes a few hopeful signs that could point us to a real find.
Trillium is kind of an encouraging sign. I don't know if it really means a lot or if it's just that they tend to come out at the same time. A lot of folks, will tend to say that where you find the thistles growing, that they seem to like the same conditions. If you start finding some of these thistles fresh out, that's a good indication that it may be an area where you find the mushrooms. This is a good sign. The spots where I find the morels, I often find these coral mushrooms along with them. We'll dig this guy out.
Coral mushrooms look similar to cauliflower. This one is small and will be difficult to clean, but the firm white meat of a large coral mushroom is good to eat.
It's real good in spaghetti. I use that one a lot in spaghettis and casseroles, that type of thing. It's not as good as the morels, but it's still a tasty mushroom.
Not a morel, but not quite a strike either. With this bit of encouragement, we continue the game.
One of the areas that's good to look, any of these areas where you've seen water running down the hill, where there's little water courses. The water's kind of channeled there. Plus, I don't know, it's my own theory. I think that it washes down some of the spores from the mushrooms, and that's where it seems like we're more likely to find them at times.
It seems those places most likely for mushrooms are often most difficult to reach. We hope the hard work will make our soon-to-be-discovered cache of morel mushrooms all that much better to eat. Only problem is we haven't quite found the cache. Huffing around, we do find a puffball, also known as Strike 2.
They're not one of my favorites. The taste is I think, kind of bland.
Further up the hill, we hit Strike 3.
Yeah, those are just some of the LBMs, little brown mushrooms.
Now discouraged and struck out, I figure this time the woods win. But even as we're headed back down the road, an experienced mushroom hunter like Pat keeps his mind in the game.
One of the things I like to do just walking along is check out these exposed hillsides along the road, especially where the waters run down. And as a matter of fact, there's one growing right underneath that one little weed.
In the last minute of the last inning of the game, we have found a morel.
There's a perfect specimen.
All right.
That's just been up a day or two, maybe even just a few hours. Still nice, hadn't started drying out yet, real nice and moist. So let's hope that's just the start.
And the hunt begins all over again. Many of Idaho's national forests require that you pick up a permit before you go hunting for mushrooms, so it's a good idea to check with your local agency before you head out.
And what about identification? How do you know which mushrooms are good and which ones are not?
Yeah, it can be difficult. Pat's advice is if you don't know what kind of mushroom it is, don't eat it. But there are also several wild mushroom guides you can pick up that can help you identify mushrooms. But probably the best thing to do is go out with an expert, somebody who knows the first time you go out.
Sounds like quite an adventure.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Exploring Idaho. We'll be right back.
Spring is the season of living at Idaho's wetland reserves. A bird's eye view next on Exploring Idaho.
If you enjoy bird watching or just want to get away for a peaceful afternoon in the country, we have a great getaway for you. It is the Bear Lake National Wildlife Refuge, and it is one of the largest wetland preserves in Idaho. And this spring, the refuge is bursting with activity.
It's a real good time of year. It's warm enough now to where most of the species are here, including the shorebird species and the long-legged waders, the herons and egrets. Of course, the waterfowl have been here since earlier in the spring.
Spring is the busy season at Bear Lake National Wildlife Refuge. During these few early months, the 18,000-acre preserve in southeast Idaho serves as a stopover for nearly 200 species of birds.
Very good habitat. The birds like it.
Wetlands manager Richard SJOSTROM spends his days touring the refuge.
Clear.
From this airboat, he monitors the birds and the habitat.
It's a great job and it's very rewarding, and it's important that we protect these areas like this for future generations to enjoy and take care of the marshes and wetlands. This refuge is unique in that it's a very large freshwater marsh, and there just aren't that many left in Idaho, and a very large population of nesting migratory birds that use it. This is one of the larger colonies of ibis in the west. This one numbers around from 3,000 to 5,000 birds, and every year we'll probably raise around 1,500 to 1,700 ibis.
The white-faced ibis nestled down in this wiry bulrush that is prolific throughout the marsh. Nestling alongside the ibis are these black and white Franklin's gulls, who don't seem too happy about Richard's presence. No matter where you look in the marsh, there is something new to see. On shore, some fuzzy indicators of the season are struggling with their first wobbly steps.
A very large population of Great Basin Canada geese that use this refuge.
These goslings are freshly hatched and less than an hour old. It is sites like these that bring locals Bill and Sherry Meserve back to the refuge time and time again.
I just love baby animals, period. You know, anything that's a baby animal is neat to see.
The two are driving the 2-mile visitor loop in search of baby goslings and some relaxation.
Oh, it's wonderful, yeah. Very relaxing, very nice. No people, as you see. You can go for miles around here and not see another soul.
And with all the activity at Bear Lake National Wildlife Refuge, each new visit is sure to be a new experience.
I think people just like to get away from the hustle and bustle of their everyday lives and just get out away from all this other stuff that they have to deal with, and they get out in these natural areas, and they can relax and enjoy the marsh life that's out here and the birds.
The Bear Lake National Wildlife Refuge is open to visitors through the summer and into the fall. And while we're on the topic of bird life, we have our Idaho puzzler for you. Can you name the official Idaho state bird? We'll have the answer when Exploring Idaho returns. Did you know which bird is named as the official Idaho state bird? Well, the mountain bluebird holds that honor. Mountain bluebirds thrive in our state, thanks in part to the many volunteers who build bluebird nesting boxes like these. Not so long ago, it was a different story. A shortage of suitable nesting sites put the mountain bluebird in decline. But recent volunteer efforts are changing that, and the Idaho state bird is once again able to thrive. If you'd like more information on any of the stories you've seen in our show today, call for a copy of the Exploring Idaho Field Notes. Be sure to ask for show number 146. Well, thanks for watching this edition of Exploring Idaho. We're going to leave you with the bright and beautiful blossoms here at the Idaho Botanical Gardens. Enjoy.